Anyway, today we have a guest speaker and we have a guest introducer. So I'm going to introduce the introducer, who will introduce the speaker. So I'm going to invite Janet Donat to come on up, and she can tell us a little bit about herself, and then also introduce Pam. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity of coming to be with you this morning. My name is Janet Donat. I work with Family Services of Westchester, and it is in that capacity that I first met our guest speaker this morning. I run a pre-release reentry program for incarcerated women at the county jail in Valhalla. It is called Emerge, Educating Women to Embrace Reentry and Gain Employment. And 6 years ago, Pamela was a participant in that program, and we had an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit. It's an 8-week program, but in those 8 weeks we really focus on relationship and on the impact of our own parenting on the way that we choose to parent our children. And Pamela graduated from that program, and shortly after, because she was awaiting sentencing, was transferred to Bedford Correctional Facility and then to Taconic. And a few months after Pamela was transferred, I received a letter in the mail, and it was from Pamela. And for the next 5 years, we really got to know each other through written correspondence, and it was such a gift to me that Pamela chose to reach out and stay connected. I learned a lot from Pamela through those years, and when I was asked to introduce her, I thought, but I feel like I know this much about Pamela. There's so much more to Pamela than I know. But what I did get to know in those 6 years about Pamela is her incredible resilience and her perseverance and her ability to focus on the positive and on her own growth, even in a very controlled and negative environment. In those 6 years, Pamela got a college degree. She was, if I remember correctly, asked to be, she was identified as the valedictorian, but chose to let somebody whose voice was not heard as often be the speaker. So there, to me, was a real, a real sign of a true leader that didn't need to be in the spotlight, but that had the compassion and wisdom to know when to step back and allow somebody else's voice to emerge. Since Pamela's release, she has encountered many of the challenges that were voiced as a response to our reflection this morning. But again, her perseverance, her resilience, her commitment to herself has really allowed her to grow in a very short time into some incredibly powerful and profound experiences. So I really look forward to hearing more from Pamela, and just want to say what a blessing she has been in my life and what an education she has given me through our correspondence.
Good morning. I'm a little nervous, so where do I start? I was released January 2nd of this year, and 2018, sorry, 2018. When I first came home, as people said, housing was the biggest issue. For the most part, unless you have a severe mental illness, you're exceedingly sick, or you have children, there's really nowhere for you to go. And you can go to a shelter, but they're not ideal, especially coming from a prison environment to go into an environment where there's hostile people, there's a lot of drug use, it's just a very hectic and uncomfortable place to be. I went into the shelter, and like I said, it reminded me in a way of being locked up all over again. And nobody would really help me. DSS gives you the basics. You get food stamps, a couple Metro cards, and they send you on your way. I was more determined than a lot of people I know to kind of get myself together. I found a job within 2 months of being home, luckily. I found an apartment within 2 months of being home, and I basically just worked and went home. I feel like that's another issue that a lot of people don't know about. When you come home, it's very overwhelming. It's very stressful. I had a lot of times where I had a lot of anxiety, and I just kind of felt really alone. I was lucky because I had a good support system. My father was involved, my brother was involved. I'm one of the lucky ones. I know women who had to come and do this by themselves. And it's really hard when you have a felony and people are always going to judge you based off of that. It is part of the reason I feel like a lot of people commit crimes again, because nobody will give them a chance and nobody will give them an opportunity. And if I'm supposed to be rehabilitated, but nobody will give me the opportunity to prove that I'm not the person I was before while I was incarcerated. I'm not the person that I was that was involved with whatever situation caused me to become incarcerated. And when you don't have support, it's not as easy to kind of just say, well, you know, I'll just wait. I'll just give it time. Because some people don't have time. And the housing that is available is very limited for women. There's so many places for men to go, but very few for females. It's just so hard as a female coming out of prison, and especially upstate. I know people that literally had maybe 2 shelters that they could go to. And if they were full, where do you go? What do you do? You're basically going to be homeless when you go home. But if you're homeless, you violate parole. It's a catch-22. So you're going to send me back to prison because I have no place to live. And it's like, what do you do when you don't have friends, you don't have family? And I feel like that's an issue that really needs to be addressed, because you can't successfully transition back into society if you have to worry about where you're going to sleep, if you have to worry about where you're going to get clothes, where you're going to get your next meal, how do I not get violated on parole? It just makes life really hard. And like I said, I was lucky. I went to school, I went to Bard. They helped me tremendously when I came home, because they offered me an opportunity with a fellowship to work at the Ford Foundation. And that's currently what I do now. I work for the Ford Foundation, do the fellowship, and I thank God every day, because I didn't know I would be where I am now so soon. And I just feel really lucky, because I know a lot of girls that came home and they're already back upstate within months, because they had nobody and nothing. So I don't really know where else to go from here, but I figured I would open it up because I'm going to assume people have questions, and I feel like I can get a better idea of what I should specifically touch on if people let me know what they want to know. Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much for coming to talk to us about this really, really pressing topic. Could you explain why it's harder for women to find shelter and probably other services too?
Okay. Honestly, I feel like the reason is because there are only 3 female facilities in New York State. There's Taconic, there's Bedford Hills, and then there's Albion. and there's a mass amount of men's prisons. So I guess they feel like they don't have to put as much funding into the women because there's less women incarcerated. But there's barely any funding for the women that are incarcerated because, like I said, there's nowhere really for you to go if you don't have a child, or like I said, if you're not sick or you don't have a severe mental health issue. I feel like we're just like the underdogs in a sense. It's not a priority to help the women. And I guess they just assume we're supposed to be more resilient, or we're supposed to, but it's like we have the same issues that the men have. They have books where they say like, oh, these are the books to help you for housing. And I used to look through them and it's like men. And I'm like, and then woman, and then 1,000 more men's facilities. And I'm just like, where are we supposed to go? But like I said, there's only 3 women's facilities. So I guess they figure we're gonna put the bulk of the money into the men. And we get basically whatever's left.
Hi, my son went to BARD, so I was aware of that program, but only from my end. I was curious how you learned of it, how you got into it, what was the criteria for you to even join it, that sort of thing.
Okay. So they come to the facility. They have a site director. He comes. They basically print out like flyers and they hand it out on the units, letting everybody know that they're taking enrollments. It's only once a year that they do it in the facility, and they accept about 13 to 16 women into it. So what you have to do is you have to sit for an exam. If you pass the exam, they call you back in for interviews. And basically, they pick the people that they feel are the best fit for the program. It's a blessing because it's such a good program, and they go above and beyond to really help us. BARD does a lot actually trying to help with housing as well, and that's not what it was set up. It was strictly just to help you with your education, and that's it. But they realized there was a really big issue with the housing and getting things together, so they've stepped up and really started helping with that as well. Like I said, it's only once a year, which is kind of sad, but it's privately funded, and they can only take 16 people. And there's so many girls that apply, like maybe 100 girls can apply, and they're only going to take 16 of you. So I just wish that they had more schools. They're working with other schools now to try to get them to come into the prisons and offer the same type of programs that BARD is doing. They're trying to work with other organizations, like Ford is on board with doing the fellowship to bring formerly incarcerated men and women in to give them the opportunity to get real work experience, because some people have been incarcerated longer than me, like 20 years, 30 years. They've never had a real job, or they don't know how to manage money, or they don't know how to work in certain environments to be successful. So they're trying to bring other organizations on board, because they said people that come out of prison, honestly, a lot of us feel like we have to prove ourselves. So a lot of times we work harder than somebody without a felony, clearly, because I have a point to prove. I have to prove that you didn't make a mistake by giving me this job, and I'm going to show you that I am a good person and I deserve the chance just like anybody else.
Good morning. I have a 2-part question.
Mm-hmm.
So you said if you're not a woman with children, resources are limited. So do incarcerated women who have children get more resources than the single woman? And number 2, social workers in prison. Did you have a social worker? Were they useful? What kind of services did they do for you? And do you think they could have done more?
Okay, so let me rephrase it. Not necessarily women like that don't have children. No. If you don't have custody of your child, if you're not going to have your child as soon as you leave prison, it's a lot more difficult. That's like my example. My son was with my mother. He's in a good area, good school. I'm not going to pull my son away from a stable environment that he's been to have him come with me into a shelter. That doesn't make sense to me, to uproot his life just so I can try to get an apartment quicker, or I can get more money towards getting an apartment. And so there are places in there that, there are organizations that come into the prison, and the first thing they usually ask is, do you have a child? Do you have your child? Is your child going to be with you? So yeah, I feel like it's easier. The places, kids are priority. When they know you're gonna have a child, places are quicker to give you a bed, are quicker to help you, because I feel also they get more funding when you have a child with you. So it's more beneficial to them to take somebody with a child than somebody who's just a single individual. And we have counselors when you're incarcerated. It's kind of a joke. They don't really help you. They do the basics of what they're supposed to do. Reentry in prison is a joke. They don't help you at all. They don't prepare you. They give you like papers and they're like, here's a list of places for housing. Oh, here's a list of this. But you have to do everything through your counselor. I can't pick up the phone and call these places. I can't send them an email. So when you are relying on somebody else to help you find a place to live, and that person either is swamped because there's not enough counselors and you have all these inmates and they have 50, 60 girls that they're trying to help, and there's not enough time in the day. So a lot of them, I feel like they just eventually kind of burn out and they just can't be bothered. They do the basics of the basics. Most women in the facilities have to do the work themselves. You have to do it yourself. You have to write the letters yourselves because your counselor's not making the phone calls. You can ask your counselor, can you call, can you email? I'll get to it, I'll get it done, no worries. I'll let you know in a week. And a month will go by and you won't hear anything. And then you're constantly having to chase them down, constantly. You basically, if you're not sitting right there when she picks up the phone, it's more than likely not gonna get done.
Hey, hello. My question, so you speak of the BARD program, and I'm curious to know, how that made a difference. I realize you're here because of who you are and your drive, but I realize from what you're saying that had an impact. Do you keep in touch with the other 15 or other folks that were in that program with you, and what now has differentiated their experience for those that have been released, like yourself, versus others that didn't make the program?
I do keep in contact with some of the girls that I was in BARD with. A lot of them, BARD has multiple fellowships. They have, I think it's called a task fellowship. That's when they help people that want to get their GEDs and finish high school. So a lot of the girls I know signed up, and now they're tutors, and they're tutoring these people and helping them get their high school diplomas or their GEDs. I feel like BARD is more beneficial because I don't feel like I would be working at the Ford Foundation right now had I not been in BARD. Could it have happened eventually? Yes. Would it have happened as quickly as it did? Probably not. A lot of girls, they have a college program which is through the prison, which is state funded. And I just feel like if you have the drive to advance your education while you're incarcerated, then you're probably going to have the drive to do better when you come home. Because we know as having a felony now, it makes things harder. So the one thing I can do to try to give myself a better chance is to have an education. Because somebody who doesn't have a college degree versus me with a college degree, they still have a better advantage just because they don't have a felony. So I feel like I always have to try to strive to do better, to try to get a better opportunity.
Hi, Pam. Hi. Putting your remarks in context of our organization, ethical, it seems that the system has been quite unethical. And in that regard, what are the, let's say, 3 things that you would dream of? What's your wish list to change that?
Are you talking about as far as like the justice system, or just My three wishes as far as the justice system, or
How it treats people who are
I wish that sentencing and judges weren't given so much authority in a sense, because, like with me, I didn't actually commit the crime that I was convicted of. But I was still, they still charged me with that crime. The minimum for my crime was 5 years, but they gave me 7, even though I had never been in trouble a day in my life. So I felt, I didn't understand it, how, why, and usually they'll let you get a plea deal, and you'll even get less time. They wouldn't give me a plea deal. They wouldn't drop my charges. They wouldn't do anything. It was 7 years ago to trial. That was pretty much my only offer. And so I took it because I didn't feel like I had a choice. I feel like, as far as corrections officers, I feel like they're given way too much authority and they abuse it a lot. And they mistreat us, they steal from us, their families send packages and things like that, things go missing. Your family comes to visit you, they will harass your family. They will treat your family badly, and they're not even the ones that are incarcerated. They might not like you, and once they see a family member comes, they'll make them stand outside in the rain. They'll make them wait hours to get in. It's like they try to discourage people from coming to see you. It's like they try to completely cut you off from the outside world. And it's not a good feeling. And probably my wish would also be that after a while, after a certain amount of time, I feel like once somebody's proven themselves and they've showed that they're not gonna get in trouble again, and they've basically completely changed their lives, I feel like that felony shouldn't show up anymore, because it's always going to cause a problem. Like now, I'm trying to move. Everybody wants a background check. I can't find a place to live because I'm afraid that if they see my felony, they're automatically gonna tell me no.
Can you just tell us some of the advantages or resources that women who have custody of their children can avail themselves of or qualify for on coming out?
I think the biggest advantage when you have your child is the housing. It's a lot easier to find a place that will take you in, and it's a lot easier to move into a more permanent residence because they offer you whatever the basic amount that they might give you, but then they'll work to get other organizations to supplement it so that even if the amount that they're giving you is not a realistic amount for you to move into your own place, they have these other organizations and they'll come and they'll pay your rent for like 2 years, or they make sure your kids have clothes, and they make sure you have clothes, and they make sure you have food and they make sure you get furniture. They just make sure that you have everything that you need because your child is with you.
Can you tell us a little bit about the program through which you first met Janet?
Family Services of Westchester was doing the Emerge program, like she said. Honestly, I don't even know what made me do the program because I was so depressed. And I didn't want to do anything. And I think maybe one of the other girls was like, you have to come out of your room. You can't like stay in your cell 24 hours out the day, just locked up. And so I decided to sign up, and I'm really glad I did. And it was a good way to just talk to people, people that are in a similar situation. When you're going through something like that, you feel like nobody understands, even though you're surrounded by people that are in the exact same situation as you. But it's just, you feel really alone. And then I felt like I didn't really have anybody to talk to. And Janet was there.
When, excuse me, when a child is going to be reunited with a parent, is housing in the community where the child is attending school, or does the child have to be uprooted?
It really depends. The reason I didn't do it is because my son would have to be uprooted, because the housing that I was looking at was in the city. And my son is in Westchester. So he would have had to be uprooted from Westchester. If you can find a place locally, then your child wouldn't have to leave their school system. But if you're moving to another town, another city, your child is going to have to leave wherever they are.
I'm just wondering, looking back at time in prison, can you say, were there any good things for you that came out of your time in prison? Was there anything that you learned that was beneficial? I mean, I know prison is not a good place to be. I've never been in one, but I'm curious, was there anything that ever, can you say, well, you know, this taught me this or that, or I see this differently now because I'm in prison, you know, or any positive outcomes?
Actually, I feel like it, as bad as it was, I feel like it kind of made me the person I am today. I think it humbled me. I think it made me want to work harder for things. I grew up pretty well, upper middle class family, so I didn't really know what it was to struggle. I didn't really know, I would say in a way, I didn't really appreciate things. And you learn to appreciate a lot of things when everything is taken away from you. When you're stripped down to the very bare minimum, you really appreciate every little thing. And I don't know if I would have finished school if I hadn't been incarcerated. I don't think I would have got my degree, because I was more interested in, like, I was 24 when I got locked up, so I was really in that stage where I just wanted to go out with my friends and I just wanted to have fun. And I wasn't as focused on, like, my career and getting myself. I was content with the job that I had, and I was content with the place that I was living, and, you know, I always felt like, oh, worst case, I'll just call my dad and it'll be fixed. And it basically made me grow up.
So we had a presentation here a year or so ago from the people at the New York Society for Ethical Culture have a home. It's a communication system where they have video communications for people who are incarcerated, and so the family gets to visit with mostly as children and their parents when the parents are incarcerated. Was that something that you ever participated with? Or I guess the bigger question is, what happened for the relationships that you had prior to incarceration, during your incarceration? Were there opportunities for you to maintain them, and how did that go?
Well, luckily I was in Bedford Hills, which is 20 or 30 minutes from here, so my family would come and visit me. They'd come and see me, and they'd bring my son, and that's how I kept in contact. I know that for people whose families are in other states and things like that, they are setting it up so they can do the video conferences with families. It wasn't set up when I was there, but it was something that they were in the process of starting. And no, it was a table, a regular table. You can hug, you can hold hands. They had an area for the kids to play with swings and slides and things like that. So it wasn't terrible. Like, it didn't have the prison feel. I think they intentionally did that, knowing people's kids were going to be coming. So the visiting area was, you know, they painted the walls, and it was nice, and they had toys for the kids and things like that. I didn't get a lot of visits from friends, which is why I don't have a lot of friends now. You know, people tend to forget about you when you're gone. So.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. Can you talk a little bit about your experience at Ford, the kind of work that you're doing there and how it's propelling your career forward?
So Ford is amazing. I love it. What they did with us is they set up a rotation. It's 3 months per rotation, and you can choose to stay in your department or you can choose to try to basically go somewhere else. It's a way for them to help you get a feel of what you would potentially want to do for the rest of your life, I guess, or at least for a while have an interest. They have human resources, communications, finance, facilities management, information management. I am currently in facilities management, which basically deals with anything that has to do with the building at all. Events, just making sure supplies are in the building, if something breaks. If people from outside, like if you guys wanted to have an event, if you decided you wanted to use the Ford Foundation, one of their rooms, like we would make sure that everything you needed, all the equipment you needed is there. They recently just moved from one building to another. Facilities was basically in charge of all of that, just making sure all the desks were there, all the chairs were there, making sure everything was up and running, functioning, and basically making sure the building was ready for everybody to come in. And I'm in that for now. I really like it, so I feel like I'm gonna stay in there for another 3 months. And then possibly, I feel like communications or human resources would also be helpful. I'm learning a lot in facilities. I'm learning how to use certain programs that I didn't know how to use. There's a girl that I work with, she's showing me things like Photoshop and Publisher and things like that I was kind of familiar with. But then, I've been going for 6 years. We didn't have computers for a long time. BARD finally convinced the facility to give us computers. So I was like writing my papers by hand. I wrote like a 20-page paper by hand, which was not a good time. And then towards the end, we finally got the computers in. But, it's limited. They limit what you can do on the computer. So you have to kind of refresh. I'm refreshing all the things that I knew before. And I'm learning a lot of new things that I missed out while I was gone.
So, excuse me. When you were released, you presumably had to make decisions about how much energy you were going to put into reconnecting with the things that had been part of your life prior to entering the judicial system. How did you make those decisions, and what was that like?
I kind of started like planning what I was gonna do, like maybe when I had a year left. For me, my biggest thing was I need to get a job. That was like my number one. I need to get a job because I don't want to feel like I have to depend on somebody constantly. I didn't want to be a burden because I felt like already being incarcerated, your family is basically taking care of you. If you have people outside, like to make sure that you can live somewhat comfortably in the environment. And I felt like my father had been taking care of me like my whole 6 years that I was in there. And I didn't want to feel like I was going to come home and he had to keep taking care of me. So that was my main priority. I'm like, I need to get a job so that I can at least support myself or at least help take some of the burden off of him. And then find a place to live. That was the next thing. I need to find a place, now that I have a job, I need to find somewhere to live because now I have a job, I can pay bills. And priority really wasn't like going out, having fun, or, trying to get friends. I didn't care about any of that because I hadn't done it for so long. And, it's when you first come home, a lot of people, oh, where were you? I missed you. You didn't miss me that much because I didn't hear from you for the last 6 years. So, you get a lot of that. Hey, oh, come over or come hang out. And it was just like, no, I'm good, thank you. But, it's a lot of people, especially when they know where you were, and they're just like, you didn't reach out to me. So I'm gonna focus in on me, getting myself together, getting to a point that even though my son doesn't live with me, but, I buy him school clothes. I buy everything he needs at this point, because my mother had him. So I don't want him to be a burden on her either, not a burden per se, but it's not her job to take care of him. And it's not her responsibility to take care of him. I am his mother, not her. So I feel like when he needs things, I tell him, tell me what you need and I'll get it. So that was my focus.
Hi, thank you for coming. I have a question. Have you considered writing a memoir? And have you considered going on social media, maybe creating your own account and doing some storytelling there? Because I would inspire you to. One of the books that I'm reading, it's called Educated, and it's a memoir. And I think it's very powerful. When I was reading this book, I was thinking actually about how some of us learn so much through reading and talk therapy, which is what sounds like you were missing. And that's the power of storytelling. And I think any story is important, but especially stories like yours are missing in our environment, in our current culture in general. And I would definitely inspire you to do something like that. Thank you.
That's really funny you said that, because I was just out with some coworkers and one of them told me I should think about writing a book. And I've thought about it. I've actually written some stuff down. It's just, I really just don't know how to put it all together the right way. It's like, I'm just, I get the thoughts, I get the ideas, and I kind of write them down, but I don't know how to really structure it to turn it into a book. And I know he was telling me, he said there's people that's what they do for a living. You give them your ideas, you give them what you've done, and then they basically, they format it for you. And I'm thinking about it. Maybe if I can get in contact or find somebody who could take my ideas and bring them to life, in a sense, I would consider it. But, it's just an idea for now.
Hi. I just wanted to commend you for just being who you are. I think it's wonderful. I actually worked at Bedford Hills when Jean Harrison was there, when she started up the daycare program and child program. And there's no mistakes in life. You are a vessel for so many women. And Janet, I also worked at Westchester County Jail, and D Block and E Block, 120 men. And I'm going back now to work in the female unit for St. John's Riverside Hospital. I'm a substance abuse counselor. And I just want you to know, just to keep on your mission, because you have accomplished such a lot in this year. And it's not easy, but you just stay focused, because you are doing exactly what you're supposed to do.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello.
Thanks for being here. Piggybacking on Yvonne's question to you, it just occurred to me that the tape of this morning might be an interesting piece to start with in developing your story. Because every question, every answer has been so enlightening to me, and I think that it might be a good place to start.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Good morning, and thank you for being here with us. This kind of question goes maybe beyond your personal experience and maybe beyond just the Westchester situation, but I find it deeply troubling that the system sounds like it works to break people. It's horrible. Are there organizations and that are working to influence change in that area?
I feel like there are organizations, like Ford, for example, by taking us in, knowing that we have these felonies, knowing, because they have like a really intense background check that they run. So it's like they really already know, and they're basically taking a chance on us, There are really bad people that are locked up and deserve to be locked up. And then there's some people who honestly made a mistake and they paid for it and they've changed. And I just feel like there's just such a stigma with somebody who's been incarcerated. And I feel like society has made it that way. And even though they claim, oh, they're going to be rehabilitated, that means when I come out, you shouldn't judge me still. That means I'm supposed to come out with a clean slate. And like I said, a lot of organizations try, and they do as much as they can, but you can't change everybody, and you can't change everybody's mind. And some people look at it like if you went to jail or you've been incarcerated, you're a bad person, and that's it, and there's no changing their minds. And there's just people that are stuck in their ways, and it doesn't matter how many people, the statistics, no matter what they show you, people that come out of prison and they're successful, and there's some people it doesn't matter to them. So it kind of sucks, but it's just a fact of life. Anybody else?
Well, so I have one more question since it seems like there is some time. I was wondering if you have had any contact with the Fortune Society. Do you know about it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Has it worked out for you at all? Have they been helpful?
I had contact with them initially, and it was actually through BARD. They were trying to help me with the housing part of it. However, the shelter I was in was like unbearable. It was just really bad. And by the time they made contact with me, I had already found my own place. It was taking longer than I thought it would. Some people probably like it's not that long. It was about a month and a half until I had my own place. About 2 months, and that's when they got in contact. And for somebody, it's like, well, 2 months isn't a long time. It is when you're in that place where I was. It seemed like eternity. It seemed like I was never gonna get out, and I just couldn't believe how bad it was. Like blatant drug use. And there are a lot of people incarcerated that are addicts, and a lot of them have gotten sober, but that type of environment, you'll relapse within a week, because you walk into the bathroom and they're getting high right in the bathroom. And it's a terrible place. It's terrible. That shelter is really, really bad. And you just have to be like completely focused going in there. I know a girl who went in there, she overdosed and died within like 2 weeks of being there. It's just, I feel like they don't realize if you have somebody who's an addict, you can't put them in that type of place when they come home, because you're basically either asking for them to relapse and go back to prison, or they're gonna die. And they don't take that into consideration. They're gonna put you wherever they can get a bed.
So it's just about time to knock off. All right. Thank you so much, Pamela.
Thank you.